The comic book industry is obviously a growing one with several comic book movies coming out each and every year. With this year, I'm pretty sure there have been a bunch already with Guardians of the Galaxy, Logan, and Wonder Woman, plus Captain Underpants, I guess, with several more releasing this year with Spider-Man and Justice League. But a lot of people don't hop in from the movies to the comic books despite, the industry, like the companies like DC and Marvel trying to make the comic books more like the movies doesn't always let people hop in because of these basic reasons that I'm going to cover today. And hopefully, if you aren't reading comic books or you know somebody who isn't, you can send this to them and hopefully this will help them on their journey. So let us begin. 1, 2, 3, let's go. Now, for this, I actually went to a few friends and online sources to ask people what problems they had getting into comic books, and while I didn't get as many responses as I liked, one of the big ones that a friend told me was the difference between how we had issues like this and then volumes like this, and was the connection between these and graphic novels. So what I'm going to tell you is individual issues are just these. They're like a segment of a story arc, and then that story arc is then usually consisted into a volume. A volume is a whole story arc that is connected to all the other story arcs in this run. Like Scott Snyder's Volume 1 for Court of Owls is the first story arc of Scott Snyder's run, but the first volume is connected to the rest of his run. They're all interconnected. Meanwhile, graphic novels are a finite work. They're meant to be collected, and they aren't connected to anything outside their own branding. Frank Miller's Dark Knight Returns is not connected to the New 52 or DC Rebirth or anything else because it's all just in its own universe, because it's meant to be collected by itself. It's not meant to cross over and affect anything else. And that's basically the main difference. A graphic novel is its own thing. It's a finite work intended on collection, as some people have put it into the Weekly Pull Discord, which is great. Go check them out. The Weekly Pull is an amazing podcast filled with tons of awesome comic book people. But yeah, that's how it was defined to me. Issues are a section of a story arc, and then graphic novels are the full story in that. So now we're going to get into the next big thing people have told me, which is comics are very expensive and I don't know where to start. Well, to talk about the expensive thing, obviously, yes, issues are expensive, especially for Marvel, where it's like $5 for like a single issue, which is admittedly a lot, though DC recently has lowered their price to $3 an issue, which is a fantastic choice in my opinion, because it has made obtaining these books much easier. But if you don't, I wouldn't recommend, if you're on a budget, buying each and every issue. I would wait till they're out in trade paperback, like trades, which are usually like $17, 17 to 20, and then you get the entire storyline. And of itself, you don't have to wait monthly or bi-weekly to get the next part of the story. You have all of it right here. So you don't have to wait, and it's cheaper if you add it all up. Instead of buying like 10 several dollar issues, you buy just one $20 thing with all of them in it. So that's where I would start if you're on a budget. Or you can always go with how I got into comic books. Go to YouTube. There are tons of internet sources and YouTube channels dedicated to keeping people updated on comic books, like Comic Storian or Comics Explained or Comic Pop. They're all based on getting people into comic books and filling you in on stories that you don't have the time or money to read, like Comic Storian's recaps, the complete story series, where he takes entire story arcs and then condenses them down to like 10-minute videos, and it's great. Go check those out. If you don't have the money to get into comic books, there's always online sources and wikis and articles about what happened. If you want to know what happens issue by issue, I recommend going to the channel Cape Joel, where he goes through and recaps and reviews each and every individual issue that he reads on his show Comic Smack. I'm pretty sure that's what it's still called. Not sure. Either way, go check those out. It's always fun. Trust me, you won't be disappointed by how they act. But still, also getting trades is much better because while you can't put them up on a wall, like I have those, I think it's showing up in the camera, you can always set them up on your desk and they're more like actual books and really fun. So yeah, recommend getting these or checking out your online sources. That was a huge tangent about YouTubers though. This is a tangent about tangents. I'm gonna skip to the next part now. I've had several people tell me that they don't know where to start with individual storylines. They don't know what characters they like or anything else. So my response usually is, if you haven't watched any of the movies, because usually that's where people hop in, they find a movie that they really like and want to learn more about that character. If you don't like any of the characters from the movies that you've seen, or you don't really care about their comic books, I always recommend picking up a team storyline like Avengers. Pick up the Avengers and then find characters that you like in the Avengers and then read into their series and other books that they've been in and use team books to branch out into other characters and storylines, because the easiest way to get into a bunch of characters at the same time is to read a book with a bunch of characters in it at the same time. So you wind up figuring out which characters you like, what types of stories you like, which ones you don't. I recommend going with the basics: Teen Titans, Justice League, and Avengers, with several others. Like, if you're into really magical books and want to know about magical characters, go into Justice League Dark, where it introduces you to characters like Constantine, Dr. Fate, and Zatanna, which are all fantastic characters I recommend. Especially if you like magic, go to Constantine. It's always a fun read. And if you are on the Marvel side, go into Doctor Strange, because Doctor Strange is like their main magic guy, and it's always great. So yeah, and if you don't want to put down the money on buying a book, go watch the movies. Like, Justice League is coming out in a few months as of filming this, and so is Avengers Infinity Wars coming out within like the next year or two as of filming this. So just go watch those movies and find out what characters you like, especially because with things like Redbox and Netflix, you can watch pretty much all of them for a few dollars. So just go rent them or watch them on Netflix and you will be set to go find characters that you like and then read into their storylines from their branch out from the movies instead of the comic books. So yeah, that's where I recommend starting on character-wise. But if you want to know about how to get started in several characters, that's a bit more complicated because there's like an infinite amount of characters. So, but I will get you started here with several characters. For characters like Aquaman, which is one of my favorites, go to the start of DC Rebirth or start of the New 52. If you want to get into Batman, read the Batman New 52, Court of Owls, which is one of the best Batman stories ever. Go read it, it's great. If you want to get into Spider-Man, I recommend going and starting at Superior Spider-Man, because that's a big change. You don't have to know much between it because you are learning about the Spider-Man universe through the eyes of Dr. Octopus instead of Peter Parker. So you learn from there, and then after that they get into Peter Parker's eventual return into comic book landscape and how that plays out. So that's always a great idea. If you want to get into characters like Nightwing, go with DC Rebirth. Or again, the Grayson run during the New 52 / DCU kind of thing was always, it was great. I liked that storyline a lot. He was a super spy and it was fantastic. I would start with that if you want to get into Nightwing, because that still affects the DC Rebirth stuff. If you want to get into Green Arrow, I recommend DC Rebirth because it's great. Most DC characters go to DC Rebirth. For a lot of Marvel characters, I would go to around the time of Secret Wars because that's when they were planning on rebooting, and then they didn't. Because they like didn't do it. They were like, it's gonna be a reboot, we're gonna have like our own crisis, like what DC does, which I'm gonna get into in a minute. And then they didn't. So yeah, they didn't. Now we are going to get into crises, reboots, and retcons. And 1, 2, 3. Now, I had a friend ask me what is a crisis on the DC side, because it's not something Marvel does, but something DC has done collectively like every 10 or 15 years or so from like forever. So what a crisis is for DC is a full-on reboot. They take all the storylines that they've done, completely erase it from the storyline, except for maybe one or two storylines that have been really well received. They just completely restart. They take a character that has had 10 years of continuity that has become hard to follow, it's become completely nuts, and you just take that, wipe it all away, and leave the base character with tons of new room for people to hop in. So I recommend whenever there's a reboot, I would recommend hopping in there, like what Flashpoint was. Flashpoint was a story that involved the Flash going back in time to save his mother, and that resulted in a bunch of crazy stuff that then resulted in the universe being rebooted into the New 52. And it was a great jumping on point for everyone because it took all these storylines that characters had and just wiped them clean, so you didn't have to go through and read anything else. You just picked up their number ones and number zeros and went on from there. And that's how DC Rebirth technically is. It's technically not a reboot, it's more like a retcon. Retcons are something else I want to get into, because unlike reboots that wipe everything from a storyline, retcons are much more smaller. They're more like mini reboots, if even that, because a lot of times they don't change everything about a character. They change one little thing, like this thing happened, but it also didn't if they reboot it. Retcon. Retcon stands for retroactive continuity, and that's when they change something that's already established. Like Spider-Man, they revealed recently and retconned in that Cindy Moon, aka Silk, was also bitten by the same spider as Peter Parker and locked up. And even though she was a character made in like 2010, they revealed, oh, she's been around the entire time. She was bitten by the same spider at the exact same time as Peter. She was just locked up, so she was there the whole time. She just didn't show up, even though she never was even mentioned in the original storyline. So that's like a retcon. Or the new Spidey comic, which adds in new storylines about a young teenage Spider-Man. Those are retcons. They retcon in him meeting certain characters like Iron Man and Doctor Doom for the first time, and just add those in. And they're all really interesting. Some retcons work, some don't, like Red Hood. Red Hood, technically, I guess, had several retcons in his origin. Like, originally, it was Superboy Prime punched the universe really hard or whatever, and it shattered and brought him back to life, and then they retconned in that it was Lazarus Pits, which is what DC Comics uses to bring people back from the dead. So yeah, that's pretty much how it works. Now, in a minute, I'm going to give you some reading suggestions for certain characters and storylines. But first, my phone camera is about to die, so I gotta go charge this. I'll be back. Peace out. I'll be back in for you, it's going to be seconds. For me, it's going to be like a minute or two. Peace. Well, what went from a quick pause of the video camera went into a half-an-hour break. So I think I was at the point where I was saying I'd give you recommendations for books. So let's go. First book I'm going to recommend is Superior Iron Man, which is a great storyline about Iron Man basically becoming a bad guy, which is really great and fun for not really the whole family. And then the next story I'm going to recommend you read if you're into Batman would be Frank Miller's The Dark Knight Returns, which is always a great storyline to read. It's one of the greatest Batman stories ever. It's fantastic. Go read it. It's glorious. Stare into Batman. Stare into his eyes. Then, the next story I recommend for you is Batman Europa. There's going to be a lot of Batman here because he's one of my favorite DC characters. I recommend Batman Europa, which is about Batman and Joker teaming up and having to travel all throughout Europe trying to find a cure for something that's happened to both of them. If you haven't read it yet or haven't heard of it, go check this out immediately. I then also obviously recommend pretty much all of the New 52 first volume books. You'll never know what you like. Definitely go check out some of the original Constantine the Hellblazer books. Go check out, if you're 17 and up, go check out Sex Criminals, because it's really great and interesting. Just trust me on that. It's not as bad as it sounds. Or it's as weird as it sounds, but it's not as bad as it sounds. So go check that out. Immediately go check out Alan Moore's Watchmen. Of course, though, pretty much all of Scott Snyder's Batman run, Superior Spider-Man, pretty much Daredevil Guardian Angel is great. Some of the original Avengers storylines. Check out Civil War 1. Don't check out Civil War 2. Check out pretty much all of the all different Captain America books for Sam Wilson and Steve Rogers, because those are great. In the same vein of that, go check out Secret Empire. Go check out both Secret Wars events from Marvel. Go check out Doctor Strange the Oath, and check out Nightwing Rebirth as well, especially Volume 1 by Batman, and then Nightwing Dies at Dawn, or Nightwing Must Die. Really great storylines. Go check those out. And again, if you're having trouble catching up on these books, 1 minute, I feel like my lighting is off. If you're having trouble getting into these books and figuring out all the continuity, use the online sources available to you, like Comicstorian or Comics Explained, or Comic Pop. If you need to know something about these characters, leave a comment below. Tweet me at Brandovader. I'm always available to help people get into comic books. Again, Comicstorian, Comics Explained, Comic Pop, and Cape Joel, and Eris from Variant Comics are all great sources to use. All of the links to their channels and stuff like that will be in the description below. And that brings this video to an end, so don't forget to go subscribe to the channel, hit the bell icon, go check out the Discord server where you can communicate with me and several other high-ranking people in, the community, like Parker, the co-host of our podcast, the Infinity Podcast. Go check that out in the links and stuff like that in the description, or should be on screen here any moment now. And go check out all the things. Hit the bell icon so you get notified. Go follow me on Twitch and stuff, because I might do stuff there eventually. But yeah, hopefully you enjoyed the video. If not, then dislike it, I guess. And hopefully I will see all you people next time. Peace out.